In the middle of the world's bluest ocean, a small private island where the sunlight shimmered on the sand like gold, where from the outside, everything looked like a perfect luxury paradise. But behind that beautiful picture lay a truth that shook the soul of the entire world. This story is not a movie scene. This is the story of a darkness that thrived in the light for years, and its name was Jeffrey Epstein. That island in the Caribbean Sea where no ordinary tourist went, where media eyes didn't reach, surrounded by high security, private jets, helicopters, and goose houses. A dream from the outside and a graveyard of humanity from within. Young girls were brought here, sometimes lured by money, sometimes with job offers, and sometimes with false promises of help. But as soon as they reached that island, their world changed. There were facilities all around. But what was missing the most was law, consent, and justice. And at the center of this entire network was one name, Jeffrey Epstein. In his public image, a quiet, educated, wealthy financier who mingled with the world's most powerful people, but whose real identity remained hidden in the shadows for years. The question wasn't whether he did all this. The question was, how did all this continue openly for so many years? And why did no one stop it? The roots of the story take us back to 1953 New York, to an ordinary middle-class family in Brooklyn, where Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born. No royal background, no business empire. Father a government employee, mother a school assistant. From the outside, this was the kind of life from which either a normal job emerges or a quiet, anonymous existence. Epstein's education wasn't extraordinary either. He enrolled in college but didn't complete his degree. No formal finance education, no elite MBA. Yet this same man would later be seen sitting among the world's richest and most powerful people. This was the first mystery that even investigators would later pause to think about. In the early 1970s, Epstein got a job teaching math and physics at a highly prestigious private school in New York. This was the same school where children from wealthy families studied. Children of politicians, bankers, and CEOs. Here Epstein got his first chance to observe the elite world up close. He saw how money thinks and how power behaves. But he didn't remain a teacher for long. Suddenly, without any clear public explanation, he left education and entered the world of high finance. In 1976, he got a job at a top investment bank, and from here the direction of his life completely changed. Even today, the question remains, without a degree, without a track record, how was such a big entry even possible? By 1980, Epstein began presenting himself as a financial advisor and money manager. But his work wasn't like ordinary advisors. His clients weren't public. His companies were opaque, and his transactions happened through private trusts and shell structures. Gradually, he wasn't just a man managing money. He became an access provider, the person who connected the rich to the rich, who gave powerful people private spaces and made himself essential everywhere. This usefulness later became both his greatest strength and his greatest danger. In his public image, he was a quiet billionaire. Few interviews, few statements, almost zero transparency. But behind the curtain, his life was growing with luxury properties, private jets, and those secret locations whose glimpse the world got much later. And from here, this story doesn't remain just one man's success story. It transforms into a story of power, secrecy, and control. Now the question becomes deeper. How did Jeffrey Epstein become so rich? Because where ordinary financiers' wealth is clearly visible, companies, stocks, clients, Epstein's money story was murky and confusing from the start. No big hedge fund and public records, no famous IPO, no clear business model. Yet his lifestyle kept growing. According to investigators, a large part of his wealth was connected to Leslie Wexner, who was a major American billionaire at the time. Wexner gave Epstein extraordinary access to his finances, even power of attorney. This was the turning point where Epstein's life changed overnight. The multi-million-dollar mansion in New York, private jets, and global travel all started during this period. But as money and access increased, his world became more and more closed. No annual reports, no clear disclosures. Everything off the record. Many journalists and experts theorized that Epstein wasn't just an investor. He was an information broker, someone who used access, introductions, and secrecy like currency. The proof isn't fully public, but it's clear enough that his wealth cannot be explained by traditional finance rules. And then came the period when this darkness slowly began to emerge. In Palm Beach, Florida, some minor girls first filed complaints with the police. Initially, no one thought this case would go beyond local crime. But as the investigation progressed, this case transformed into a global scandal where money, power, politics, and system failure were colliding with each other. And then something happened that shook everyone. In 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested again, with serious charges like sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. But by then it was too late. The voices that had been unheard for years had now become questions before the entire world. And then inside the four walls of jail, a death occurred that didn't bury the truth, but made it even more mysterious and terrifying. With Epstein's death, the case didn't end. Rather, the questions increased. Was he really alone, or was he just part of a larger system? Are power and money so strong that they can suppress truth for years? And perhaps this is the most frightening aspect of this story, that this isn't just Jeffrey Epstein's story. This is the story of a world where influence, access, and silence become the greatest power. But the story doesn't end here, because in every question, in every untold truth, the hope for justice still lives today. And perhaps this hope reminds us that no matter how much truth is suppressed, one day it surely comes out. Because as they say, no matter how deep the darkness, a ray of light will pierce through it.